You already know. You already know. We've been through this before, right? We've been through this. So willfully, everybody jumps over. I'm just gonna give everybody a moment. Let me see. People are messaging me now, telling me, "All right, peace, Marjorie." Let them know I started a new one. Thank you, precious mom. So we already know what it is, right? They did this to us before. You know what's interesting? Um, I jumped on someone's live recently. Their live was going great. I jumped on it and commented, and then it started shutting down. So, so I'm like, no, you can't do your own lives, and you can't get on anybody. If you get on someone's live, we're gonna shut their live down. So we try. I'm using a different device now. The same thing I did last time. I used two different devices. This is a third device now. So let's see what happens. Let's see how long we'll go, or how long we can go before such and such. But yeah, so I was just saying, as far as readings, which that should please the powers that be. Like I'm saying, hey, I'm gonna be less present to the community. Isn't that what y'all want? Why are you still bothering me? Where did I put that? So charged up, so that won't be the excuse. Yeah, like you said, I think Lo just said can't stop, won't stop. I'm just plug this in. Hopefully it'll stay charged. Yeah. So anyway, back to what I was talking about. Yeah. So I'll probably still be doing consultations, but it will be a lot less. You know, like maybe just a couple of days out of the month, something like that. Because like I said, there's other things that have to get done right now, and this is just peace, Esme. The season, you know, the season dictates agenda, you know. But and you go to Cassie Derwin. She does reading. You ain't gotta go to me. You know, there's other folks. If the reading is what you're looking for, it might be something else. But you know, anyway. So what I wanted to talk about was a couple things. One, before anybody drifts and goes away, I wanted to share that I guess in alignment with the reading piece too, that I'm going to be doing little to no lives in 2021, Gregorian. So I'm primarily going to be putting my focus on my podcast. I know, remember that the neglected podcast. So and the reason I'm doing that is because I've been feeling really convicted lately about my contribution to people sitting in front of plastic screens, or just sitting in front of cell phone screens and the like. And I don't want to really contribute to that culture. Um, it doesn't mean that I'm going to go off forever, but I just want to take a break from doing videos and things like that. And just with the podcast, at least you can still sit in nature and listen to a podcast and look around and not necessarily just be like this in a screen. So, with so many things that are going on in the world today, um, I just really would like people to have their wits about them and just kind of really be in tune with what's going on around them, and me kind of creating an experience where or helping to facilitate more experiences where you're looking into these devices and not looking around you. I don't think it's right for me to do that. So yeah, with that, I'm not gonna really be doing too many videos. I got a couple of little videos that I'm gonna do that like just little kind of like how I did the Peace Sacred Step, kind of like how I did the Archon video, which is I was narrating something and it's short and just some slides and stuff like that. I got a couple of those that's been sitting on my hard drive that I just haven't uploaded. So I'll probably just do those. But as far as like me sitting and doing lives and stuff like that, I don't wanna. I don't wanna. Yeah, I don't wanna do that. All right. So I wanted to do this video to just kind of let people know. If you want to find me, go over to the podcast. Okay. In fact, this particular segment I was going to do as a podcast, and then when I thought about it, I said, well, let me just let people know that I'm gonna just focus on audio for a little bit. I'm gonna start doing. I'm on Clubhouse too, but I just haven't done any Clubhouse sessions yet. But I've been getting urged to do some Clubhouse talks, so I'm gonna do some of those too. So if any of you have uh, had the privilege of getting a Clubhouse invite, you can definitely find me over there as well. I know it's a very exclusive platform, and there's not a lot of us over there yet. But if you are, I'm over there. But that and the podcast, and that's about it for now. I'm gonna give let YouTube get some space, and as well as some of the other multimedia platforms that haven't been kind. They've been shadow banning and all that other stuff like that. So I'm just gonna focus on the podcast. Like I said, I just want to do audio for a little bit. Go back to that. Go back to the old days. All right. So yeah, I just wanted to share that before anybody drifts or whatever. So you just kind of know. And just podcasts you can find everywhere. You can go to my website, chiefuyuya.com, or if you're on Apple Podcasts, I'm over there, or Google Podcasts. You can find me in pretty much any podcast platform you're gonna find me. All right. So anyway, with that being said, that's always the perfect segue. You can say anything and just say, and with that being said, it's almost like the no disrespect intended, but it's one of those kind of segues. You can say anything you want after that. Angel 2222 had the pleasure of having a consultation with you last year. However, also received. I didn't get the rest of it. Yeah, sorry about that. However, also received many answers to your podcast. I appreciate you. Thank you for all that you do. You are more than welcome, Angel 2222. You know, like I say, for the most part, all the answers I already gave you. You know what I mean? So, and I understand sometimes one-on-one consultations are necessary, but you know what? A lot of times they're not. That's not to knock anyone who's doing one-on-one consultations, anything like that. But I give a lot of information, and if you're just motivated to go through them and really meditate and really start to apply them, you'd be surprised how many situations would be healed. It's just that a lot of times, because of our arrogance, we think that our situations are so unique and our psychology is so distinct from other people. So there's no way that those solutions could work for me. A lot of times we don't realize some of the things that we're going through are a product of a systemized way of being, that's been placed in front of us, and we've all been victim to it. So we all just respond differently. But anyway, let me get to what we're talking about. So Thundar the Barbarian. No, hold on. With that being said, Thundar the Barbarian. I'm sorry. I know I didn't segue. That wasn't a clean segue. You know what I mean? But with that being said, so yeah, so I have been wanting to do a segment for a while on Thundar the Barbarian, right? And it's been like, it might have almost been a year, but I know it's been like months. And I kept saying, man, I wanted to teach like a whole class on this particular cartoon, right? And I know a lot of you are probably not even familiar with it at all, which is cool, but I wanted to just display something that's used a lot of times in media, not only media that we kind of follow as adults, but also a lot of times the media that's put in front of us as children or put in front of our children. A lot of times it's a lot of occultism. Like we figured that out. Peace, Logan. You know, we figured out that between the movies, cartoons, and things like that, that there's a lot of occultism that's placed in front of children. But you know, I know sometimes we don't really know what Peace Arlene, Mama Arlene, Madam Arlene, Mistress Arlene, you know. But but yeah, we a lot of times, you know, we may be aware that those things are there, but we don't really know what to do about it. Sorry, man, the music I'm playing is a buzzkill. Uh, Peace, Mr. Two, Miss Two. Peace, James Garabaki. I'm still with you. I'm still talking. I'm just the music was whack. Music sounded like, you know, Knight Rider. Seen the Knight Rider or something. All right, let me go acapella for a minute. So yeah, like I was saying, a lot of times we kind of just get into these trick bags where we're constantly kind of taking in a lot of different esoteric and occult information. Don't really know where to put it. Where am I going to put all this stuff? And sometimes it's because it's presented to us in a very like garbled way. And like I said, I've been wanting to do a segment on Thundar the Barbarian for so long. Like I was like, man, I could teach a whole class on this card. And there's a couple other ones too, like Space Ghost is another deep one. Um, but made by the same person, Jack Kirby. Um, but or you know, but I said let me just start here because I've been meaning to do it and I haven't done it. And I was like, you know what? The easiest way sometimes to flush stuff out is just to do a live. You know, just put myself on the spot and just do it. So I had like I was gonna do slideshows and everything, and kind of like a whole PowerPoint thing. So I just have some pictures in front of me, and maybe so I'm gonna flow off of the pictures. I usually like to use pictures more than notes, you know. But okay, so for anyone who may or may not be familiar, peace, Naya. You know, peace, greetings to you, Madam Naya. You know, it looks like our restart of the segment didn't really didn't mess up too many things as far as people missing us. And I didn't put up a link or share it on Facebook or anything like that, but it looks like we're doing all right. You know, we'll get some people. But feel free to post, you know, Chiefs on y'all. You know, feel free because I didn't put anything up. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, man. Peace, me, myself, and I think you were on the other live, right? You know, I think I could have sworn I saw you. So Thundar the Barbarian, right? Just to give you some background on it, it was a really cool little cartoon. You know what I mean? That ran. It only ran for 2 seasons, but it came out in 1980, and so that's why I know a lot of you probably like, what? You know, I wasn't even born yet. I know. Just ride with me on this. And some of you do know what it is, but you're gonna pretend like you didn't, but you were there. So Thundar the Barbarian, right? It was a cartoon that really pulled heavily, seen it on the Cartoon Network, but never really watched it. Yeah, you know, if you don't really have the nostalgic piece in it, it might not, like you might see a rerun of it. I don't think they're on now, but it might not really mean anything to you. But you know, certain cartoons and stuff that they show, for those of us who got to see them when they were fresh, you know, when the film was still nice and fresh. Of course, there's a nostalgia. You know, if you looking at Space Ghost or the Herculoids or I used to love G-Force. G-Force was also Battle of the Planets. Speed Racer, right? I don't remember watching it, but I knew of it. I remember Gargoyles. Yeah, that was much later. Gargoyles was in the '90s. We talking. This ran from 1980 to 1981, right? Um, yeah, but you may not have that nostalgic piece in there, so that, like I ain't watching that, right? I get it, you know what I mean. So I'm not urging you like go watch it. It was a deep cartoon. No, I'm just using it. I'm just using it as a springboard into something else, you know. So anyway, so this particular cartoon, it came out around the time like when Dungeons and Dragons was it? Well, actually, no, it came out before Dungeons and Dragons. I'm sorry. It was really feeding off of the Star Wars energy at that time. Star Wars was real big, but and I'll explain where that went. But it was about a post-apocalyptic world, which was so deep about it because um, you think about Saturday dawning cartoons, which they don't have anymore. They killed that. Part of the reasons was because of Dungeons and Dragons, because there were a lot of mothers groups at that time that were saying that the cartoons were just getting too dark. You know what I mean? And then they replaced a lot of them with like Care Bears and stuff like that. That just kind of like those little weak, the littles, you know. But you got like Dungeons and Dragons, and they got shut down because they had an episode, their final episode, which wasn't a final episode, but they killed the show after that, where they had one episode where their main antagonist, his name was Venger, and they had sat and they had debated killing Venger, right? So for a children's cartoon, you usually, as a mother, you don't want to know that your child is watching a cartoon where they're negotiating someone's death, in the cartoon, like they're the main villain, you know. So you think about like Strawberry Shortcake, the main villain was the Purple Pie Man. So like the worst he's gonna do is throw a blueberry pie in your face. Like, okay, we can live, but they were like, we gotta kill Venger. He gotta go. So there was a lot of protests about that episode, and then it was done. And then around that time, they just started shutting down Saturday dawning cartoons until like now it's non-existent. So it didn't even exist anymore. So cartoons like this were kind of a thing of a age that just doesn't exist anymore. But it's been nagging at me for a while. Like, man, do the Thundar, John. But I just, like I said, I'm busy. Um, so and I'm just looking at my pictures here because, like I said, I like to use the pictures to kind of take me where I want to go. So, like I said, Thundar the Barbarian. Um, what was so cool about it was, and I wanted to, I don't have it. I wanted to read the. Let's see if I can find it real quick. I wanted to read in the beginning, like there's a almost. I was gonna just play it, but I don't want to get the copyright thing and all of that happening. But there's like the little narration in the beginning where they basically tell you what happened, which sets up the show, and it's real cool because um, uh, Jack Kirby, like he really, you could tell like he really was into some occultism. He was really into the occult. You could tell. Yeah, I don't know. I was because sometimes I was trying to find it, but basically, okay, it starts off where they show you, and you feel free to go look at the intro online or whatever. But basically, the year is 1994. Now, remember this show came out. He created like in the late 70s, but it came out in 1980. So 1994 is the future, right? And basically, what happens in 1994, a runaway planet, that's what they call it, a runaway planet passes between the Earth and the Moon, it causes a like a cataclysmic gravitational shake, right? And you see it in the intro. If you look up like the intro, you'll see the planet go by and then the moon, the atmosphere moves and stuff like that. So I mean, that right there was pretty revolutionary. Like again, for a children's cartoon, like it's pretty good stuff. But this happens in 1994, right? So what happens is that like it basically wipes out most of the life. And what happens is it disrupts the gravitational pull of the moon to the point where the moon splits in half, right? These are all very like deep concepts, the idea of the moon splitting, and the runaway planet, which could be considered an asteroid, right? And there are theorems around that. I'll get into that for a second. There are theorems around, they call it the Big Impact theory, but we'll get into that. They're just theories, so that they're not, I don't want to present them as like their fact or their truth, anything like that. And then of course we have the information we're given from the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, but we'll get into that as well, right? So the idea again, this runaway planet comes, boom, goes between the Earth and the Moon, and it just throws everything into disarray. So now the show picks up 2,000 years after this impact event. So now the year is 3,994. Okay, and the show goes on from there, right? 3,994. Now, I just thought it was very interesting. And again, I watched this when it first came out, right? And, for me, back then, 1994, 1995, we were going to be having flying cars. so you could just imagine my surprise when like all we had was, Nirvana and the genocide in Rwanda, but so you got to imagine this coming out 15 years earlier, but it's like the near future. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I can see that because it's a cataclysmic event. It's not like science is so advanced that they did something and blew the planet up. It's like something that just hurled from outer space and happened, right? So, and I'm just looking at images of the intro. I don't have the video. I wanted to read it. But basically, like I said, it's 1994. It happens, and then there's a post-apocalyptic kind of environment that we're in, and you got to remember too, at this time, though Y2K or year 2000 wasn't like a big scare event in the 80's, it was still something that was on the horizon. Like, what's the year 2000 going to be like? So something like this happening before the year 2000 also made it kind of interesting, right? So now we have the collapse of civilization at this point, and we have the emergence of not only like a feudal society, but we also have the emergence of a mutant class of people and animals, and now also magic appears back on the earth again. Okay, so in many ways, the planet Earth, as a result, and the splitting of the moon, is brought back into like a more primitive time. There is now this conjoining of science and math, right, and wizardry, as it's called. And wizards, for the most part, serve as the antagonists, and most of the experiences that our main protagonists go through. So what we now get to experience is three individuals who basically roam around the globe helping people, and they're Thundarr, which is the name of the show was Thundar the Barbarian, Princess Ariel, and Ookla, the mock. Okay, and I'm going to get into the characters because the characters are like real interesting. This is where the occultism comes in, right? Now we're having fun with this, right? But I'm gonna also show you something. I'm always gonna teach you something, but this is a fun go on the journey type of segment too. You know. So let's start with Thundarr, right? Because Thundarr is the main dude. Basically, if you remember He-Man, Thundarr looks like a bootleg He-Man. Like he wears fur, which is significant. He's blonde. Of course, he's got to be blonde. This is 1980s. You can't have a hero, with the exception of Superman, you know, who's not gonna be blonde, right? Peace Retro Beats. So you got Thundarr, who's the main dude, Thundar the Barbarian. You got to pay attention to the name Thundarr, right? Now, it's very interesting because, of course, it sounds like thunder, and you already get the symbolism that he's representing kind of a pantheon of thunder deities. Um, I often would associate him to Nzazi. If any of you are familiar with Congolese cosmology, Nzazi is that thunder dog, if you will. Peace simply Soki botanicals or Soki, but blessings to you too. Um, so if you're familiar with Congo archetypes, if not, don't worry about it. You know, it's not a big deal. So you have Thundarr, and Thundarr used to be a slave. He was a slave to the wizard Sabian. Now in the series, Sabian is spelled Sabian. Now what I noticed about this series is that Jack Ruby was smart because he used certain Peace Shadow book. He used certain spellings, and yeah, he used certain spellings and kind of slight pronunciations to throw you off the trail, but to make sure the paradigm of certain energy was still present. So even like Thundar the Barbarian instead of Thunder the like, you know what I mean? Like he did little things like that. So like Sabian, we'll get into Sabian in a second. But Thundarr, he was freed by Princess Ariel. Sabian was Princess Ariel's stepfather, right? We'll get into that too. Don't worry, we're gonna go like character to character. Um, but one of the things about Thundarr was that he hated wizards, and one of the reasons he hated wizards because he was enslaved by a wizard. He and Ookla, the mock. Ookla, very interesting. So Princess Ariel, who was a sorceress, not a wizard, and she always made sure to let you know, I'm not a witch, I'm a sorceress. She made the distinction, right? Um, she had given him this weapon called the Sun Sword, right? That's a very important piece in all of this. And the Sun Sword, only he could use it. And he would always keep it on his wrist, like it was almost like a wristband he had. And just the hilt of the sword, he would keep there. And basically, I mean, yeah, in some ways it was a knockoff lightsaber, right? Because again, this is the Star Wars time period. I mean, the formula was Star Wars, right? So just to be clear on a couple of things, you had Thundarr, who was like wild and brazen, but he had the sun sword, as he called it. You had Princess Ariel, who was like real smart, real witty, always cracking jokes. So that was like Leia, the smart mouth princess. Then you had Ookla the Mock, which was basically a Wookiee. He was basically Chewbacca, but just a little different, right? So the formula was there, but the occultism, they hid it inside of it, right? I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you. I feel like I want something on music, but anyway, okay. So he's got this sun sword, right? That Ariel makes for him. Now, Peace QNC #1 fan. I'm speaking about Thundar the Barbarian tonight. Peace, Deidre Sully. So, like I was saying, so he's got the sun sword that Ariel gives to him. Pay attention to that. Ariel gives him the sun sword. He's a barbarian. He's always on go. Like that's the thing about him. Like, he's just always ready for action, always ready to defend the defenseless, yada yada yada. Right? let's just go through it. Then we have Ariel, Princess Ariel. Well, we don't really find out what she's a princess of, right? But we just know she's a princess. But she's like the brains of the operation. Like Peace Face, her father, she always talks about, like, she knows about Earth's old history. So a lot of times, like, as they're going through different adventures, they might end up at like at an old dilapidated movie theater, and she'll explain like, oh, this is where they used to show moving pictures in old Earth and stuff like that. So she knows about Earth's history. She's a sorceress, and she primarily, her sorcery is based around light, right? So every time you, like, she's able to build bridges and solid objects using light, right? Important. Now, why is that important? Because, and she's Asian. We find out in one of the episodes they're in a we don't know if they're in an Oriental, a place in the Orient, or if they're just like in Chinatown. But she's like, oh, this is a place that I believe like my ancestors came from. So that's when they would drop in the hand like, oh, she's actually part Asian, but she's dark. She's dark tone. Probably like close to like my complexion, but Asian, right? Now here's part of the cool thing that they did here, right? So you have Princess Ariel, and of course the first thing we would probably go to is Ariel, like Ariel. Okay, that must be talking about the angelic energy of Ariel. Now Ariel is the lion of God. Arr means lion, and El, of course, is short for Eloha, or Eloh, which means a high divinity, right? But nah, that's Jack Ruby giving us the little because you have to, if you pay attention to like her character, you realize that it's not Ariel, it's Ariel. Okay, those are two different angels that get confused for each other often, right? Ariel is also known as Uriel or Uriel, right? Depending on the system that you're working with, when you're working with the Hermetic systems, a lot of times they say Ariel, and Ariel is almost you could say pronounced or spelt like O-U-R, like R, right? But it's dealing with that energy of Uriel. So she's clearly the angel Uriel. Now, how do we know she's an angel? I'm just looking at pictures of her. Like, for one, because she's an academic. Like, that's one of our first. Oh, you more than welcome, Cassie. You remember Thundar the Barbarian? You wasn't watching no Thundar the Barbarian. But so she Uriel or Ariel. So I'll just call her Ariel because that's what they called her in the in the cartoon. So that way, if you watch an episode, and there's probably an episode or two on that you can watch online, you'll know who I'm talking about. But she's the stepdaughter of Sabian, right? And yes, okay, working with Cassiel. Oh yeah, okay, Cassiel, right? Um, her mom's was killed, by some humans who were raiding a caravan. But we won't get into that right now. Anyway, it doesn't matter, right? So the thing to know about Uriel, we're gonna focus on Uriel for a second. We can take it like if you want to read the book of Esdra, the biblical book. If any of you read the Apocrypha, you'll see that name Uriel, and you notice that part when Ezra is presenting all of those questions to Yahweh, and the answers that are given back to Ezra are giving back to Ezra through the archangel Uriel, right? And well, we'll get into the archangel thing. Why Uriel's an archangel? So Uriel in that form, we realize is an instructor, is a teacher. Now, when you watch the cartoon, you see that Ariel is always teaching Thundar stuff. Like everywhere they go, like it's almost like at the beginning of every segment, like when they go to the island of Manhattan, which of course is Manhattan. And she's like, oh, this is where Earth people used to do this and do that. And she's always teaching, right? So we see that that Uriel energy is an energy of instruction, and also Uriel was always, if you read the apocrypha, it speaks about that's one of the angelic energies that were slated to rule on the planet at the end of times, or like at the basically at the apocalypse, right? So Uriel, Raphael, Gabudalan, Gabriel, um, Zebulon, Beberos, and there's a couple other ones, right? But Uriel is a part of those angels that are there at the end, right? Um, Also, Uriel is considered to be, because remember, there's different forms of angels. Like this, like angels have a nation too. So Uriel is actually a cherub, right? So the cherub holds the flaming sword. Okay. Now remember, it was in the cartoon. It was Ariel who gave the sun sword to Thundar. Now, one of the things I was going to save this to the end, but one of the things that you're gonna realize is that Ariel in the cartoon, right? I'm gonna use them interchangeably because it's just the way I'm thinking. You're gonna realize that Ariel, Thundar, and Ookla are actually the same person. You're gonna see that. Like I said, Jack Ruby did a real interesting thing with this particular this particular cartoon. You know, um, well, actually, it was the company Ruby Spears. Jack Kirby was the one who who did the actual um, the creation of Thundar. His real name was actually Jack Kurtzberg. Jack Kurtzberg. So just from the name, you kind of know what what community he was a part of. But he changed his name to Jack Kirby because I guess he thought Kirby. I guess he thought Kirby sounded a lot tougher. But anyway, I shouldn't laugh. Actually, I know somebody named Kirby. But oh, thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. Um, so Uriel is a cherub, and Uriel was one of the cherubs that was said to stand at the Garden of Eden with the fiery sword, right? Protecting the fiery sword. We'll get into that again because Uriel is an important part. But when you read some of the older works, it said that Uriel stands at the Garden of Eden, protecting it with a flaming sword, while watching over thunder and terror. Watching over thunder and terror. You look at the cartoon, you have Ariel, who watches over Thundar, and Ookla the monk. Now, Ookla the monk basically looks like it's like a lion standing on 2 feet. He doesn't have a language. Well, he has a language, but he's like Chewbacca. It's all there's no like words, right? It's terrifying, right? So so I'm just kind of looking at how, because our outfit changed too, like from the original sketches. But like I said, Uriel means the light of God, because in Hebrew means light. Ur. So when you see that or Uriel or Uriel, it's speaking about the sun or the flame of God. And like I said, when you look at the cartoon, her magic was typically, like I said, like some type of light, something like that. Uriel is also patron over the north as well as the element of earth. So when you look at Uriel, if you ever look at like any Kabbalistic, not so much Kabbalistic, Hermetic sciences, when you see Ariel, which will be, like I said, either O-U-R or A-U-R-I-E-L, right? When you'll see oftentimes Ariel is holding wheat or grain, and it's depicted as green or like coming out of the earth because of that idea of representing like an earth energy, right? So, and also the season of summer is Ariel, right? So that's Ariel. So far you got Thundar, and you have Ariel or Uriel, or like I said, I might bounce back between the two of them, man. So don't hold me to just one. All right. So then we have. Let me pull up my pictures of Ookla. Like I said, I was gonna do a whole slideshow and narrate behind it, but then I was like, maybe I'll just hold up the pictures in front of the camera as I talk. But I don't like. Yeah, it's kind of low budget. I don't want to do that. It doesn't, I just talk. But so Ookla, right? Now, Ookla is a tricky one, and the reason I say tricky because Jack Kirby said that he got the name Ookla from the University of California, from UCLA. So UCLA, if you take the words, is UCLA, right? Ookla. So that's where he says Ookla's name comes from. That's possible. That's possible. The way it's spelled on credits and stuff is Ookla, Ookla. But that's not even the important part of the name. It doesn't matter. Who cares? The important part is what Ookla is. Ookla is a mock. So Ookla the mock, and Ookla is the species. The mocks are like I said, they're a feline species. But if you look at Ookla in the cartoon, he doesn't. There's nothing about him that looks like a cat, other than he's got like fangs, and the sounds he makes almost could sound like a cat, but there's nothing about him that's really cat-like. He looks like maybe a bear or something. Basically, he's a bootleg Chewbacca, right? Let's just get right down to it. When you get right down to it, Ookla is a bootleg Chewbacca, right? But here's the thing. Right? So, like I said, I want you to focus not on that. I want you to focus on the fact that Ookla is a mock, is a member of that species. Ookla was originally enslaved with Thundar underneath the wizard Sabian. We'll get into Sabian in a second, right? Ookla was enslaved with Sabian. Now, Ooklas don't like water, very similar to cats. They're like deathly, although I know cats who get in water, but Ookla is like deathly afraid of water. He rides a horse, but I don't want to get on. I don't even care about it. That part isn't important, right? Here's the important part. Well, to me, right? I don't want to cut your wisdom. If you see something that's important, you can go ahead with it. The fact that Ookla is a mock. Now, this for me takes me originally to General Mock, right? And General Mock, some of you may be familiar as General Monk, or General Monk, or General Mock, or General Mud. Okay, very important figure, General Mock, or General Monk, right? You can use them interchangeably, but you're going to hear me say General Monk probably a little bit more. But again, remember Mock, right? So, there's no accidents here. Now, if any of you are familiar with, and remember, we're talking about a cartoon, so I'm just gonna call it all. We're just talking about stories. They're just like comedians say. They're just jokes. They're just stories. We're just talking about stories here, right? So, so General Mock, right? Which we're gonna hit on a second. We're gonna hit General Mock, because General Mock. Thank you, Cassie, for the cash app. That was you. Appreciate it. Cassie Derwin. If you're familiar with the Yakub story, right? I'm not gonna tell you the whole Yakub story. You can find that out. Like it's not a But let's just skip to the part of the Yakub story with the Ebenoid king, right? And if any of you are like they say Greeks, you know about walking across the desert, the hot desert sands, right? Which is a reference to what you go through in your initiation period when you are going through your hazing period for your fraternity, right? You walk across the burning sands. Now, walking across the burning sands and riding across the burning sands are two different things. Also in Freemasonry, the idea of walking across the burning sands is very critical. Remember, we're still talking about Ookla the Mock. Um, Ookla the Mock, his science is all just in his name, Mock. Like, you're supposed to know what we're talking about. Like, it's not like Ookla, he doesn't really talk. You know, he just beats, he's a brute. You know what I mean? He's like Chewbacca. You know what I mean? Even though Chewbacca was like the Imhotep of that whole experience, because he was the one who fixed everything, and he always had that metal sash, and you know what I mean. But let's just so we'll skip to when the Ebenoid king exiles the Abonoids, right? And you can go look up the story of Yakub, right? And basically, the Abonoids were causing trouble among the Ebenoids. You know, it's like brand Nubians, the devil still causing trouble amongst the righteous people, right? That's what they were referring to. So the king was like, yo, y'all gotta, like, you gotta go. And not only do you have to go, I'm gonna have to send like my toughest warriors to make sure that, you know, you get up out of here and you don't come back, right? So he marched them. First, what he did was he stripped them. He stripped them of all the science and the technology, and even the clothes that he had provided the Albunoids as in an effort to civilize them, right? So he stripped them of everything. So they had to walk across the hot sands barefoot. Now we're talking about it. We're talking about the story here, right? But I'm relating it to Ookla the Mock, so you can understand the Mock, right? So the warrior that he sent, or the general, peace, Nikki Love. That's the second eye I got. I don't know. You know, I'm not good with emojis. I don't know what they mean. What's the eye? um, so I just, I thought all the time this was somebody praying. I found out that's high five. So all the hieroglyphs I decode and read all the time. You would think I would be able to figure out some doggone emojis. I don't know. Emojis like harder than hieroglyphs. But so I guess they're the new hieroglyphs, right? They're the new language. Um, but like I was saying, so if we go to that time, right? So the soldier that he sent was laughing at me, was General Monk, right? And like I said, interchange monk with monk, with muck, with mock, and with muck mud or mock mud. They're all talking about the same person. Sometimes it's just said differently depending on who's telling the story. If you ever watched the show Marco Polo, I got to watch it. It was real cool. I don't know if I saw all the seasons. I think I saw it to 2, 3, something like that. But there's a scene when Kubla Khan, when he's like speaking, he was like, "And to our ancestor Monk," you know, and he's talking about General Monk, you know, and remember that was third season. It's good, but that third season was mad. Oh, okay, I don't remember if I saw third season yet. I saw a couple of seasons, but it was a while ago. But so and remember the con piece. The con piece is important. We're gonna come back to that. The relationship there to Monk, right? So basically, the Ebenoid King, he sends General Monk, and he was like, "You need to take these Albinoids. You need to march them across the burning sands, and send them into the caves of Europe, right? So he marches them back across. Now, it's something important too in that story, man, that a lot of people mess up. I just got to do like a little side, little extra teacher moment. So a lot of people will use this as justification to say like the Albinoids, and you just can imagine who the Albinoids might have been. No, don't imagine, because that's where it gets messed up. That's where it gets twisted. That all the Albinoids were sent back to Europe. That's not true. The ones who were causing devilishment were sent back. You gotta read the lessons. So what does that mean? That means that they wasn't all causing devilishment. So the ones who weren't called devilishment were allowed to stay in Mecca, right? So again, if you're not familiar with the lessons, you might be like, "What the hell are you talking Mecca?" Right? So again, it's in the lessons, which are not really even secret anymore. You can get them online, but the point I'm saying is that we're speaking about a time when the Albinoids came into Mecca, and I want you to be clear on where Mecca is. Mecca is where the original man establishes civilization. Okay, so you got to understand like what's being said here. It's not as literal all the time as you might imagine. You can create Mecca if you're an original person establishing civilization. So when the Albinoids were allowed to come into Mecca, some of them started causing trouble. Some of them civilized and gained the wisdom and behaved civilly. So they were allowed to stay. The other ones were sent back or sent across the burning sand. Not even back, but sent to the burning sand, across the burning sands, right? That's an important thing, man, because, you know, sometimes in people's childishness, they want to believe that whole groups of people can be classified as one thing. And that's really silly. And a lot of times that's done to remove accountability from yourself. Just as the others cannot be all classified as one thing, you can't be all classified as one thing. There are deities that and devils that exist in all spectrums. Period. Okay? So that's just a little side thing to annoy people. I know some people don't want to hear that. But that's just because some people are really immature and, don't want to take accountability. Like, you do some foul stuff too, man. You ain't the only one. you know. Um, so Monk, he marches them across the, and I'm gonna, get to it quick. He marches them across the sands. He's not letting them walk. They're walking day and night, and he doesn't let them rest until they reach their first 1,100 miles. Now, I'm not going to do the mathematics and all of this right now. I could and show you some extra stuff in there with the 24 but maybe another time. But I really don't want to do the Yakub breakdown right now, to be honest with you. I really want. I'm sticking to Thundar the Barbarian, and I'm still talking about Ookla the Mock. But I want you to see the significance of Ookla the Mock and why they called him, why they named him the Mock, and why there's a race of people. Oh, we'll get to that. The Mocks have all the gold in Thundar the Barbarian. They have a mountain of gold that they keep that nobody knows about. Like that, there's a whole science to that, right? So yeah, General Monk he rounds them all up and he's like, all right, come on, like let's go, and he puts chains around their necks and cable tows where they're towed together, chained together, and he puts lambskin to cover themselves, to cover their nakedness. That's important. Because the lambskin is fashioned in the shape of an apron. So you can ask a Mason, a Freemason, why they wear the apron. And then you can ask them the question, did you walk across the burning sands? Or did you ride across the burning sands? You can ask that question. Let's see what you get as an answer. Because General Monk and his troops, they rode on camels and on horses. General Monk rode a white Arabian horse. the fact that it was an Arabian horse is significant. And but the albinoids, they had to walk, and they only had their lambskin aprons to cover them, right? And Monk, he carried basically a high-powered rifle. He had a rifle, but he also had a sword that was called the flaming sword. He had a sword of fire, or some people call it the sword of light. Here we are again, right? Thundarr carries the sun sword. Ariel or Uriel carried the sun sword, and General Monk, or Ookla the monk, but General Monk has the flaming sword. And basically, what would happen is whenever the albinoids would fall, when they couldn't walk anymore, he would cut their head off. And it goes on. So he makes them walk for 1,100 miles. They get to rest at an oasis, and then he makes them walk another 1,100 miles until they get to their first cave, right? And then he rounds them up, so you better stay in that cave. And any of them who tried to escape out of that cave, he would cut their head off, right? So whenever you hear the Apostles' Warning by Mobb Deep, and you hear that line when Prodigy says, like General Monk ordered to chop necks, that's what he's talking about. There's also a line RZA has in a song. Oh, and Lord Jamal and the and what's the name of that song? The Original Man. I think it was the Original Man, where he talks about Monk chopping off the necks, right? So that's what they're talking about, General Monk. But anytime they tried to come back east, he would cut their neck. And then there were certain times when he and his troops would just run up in their land and just cut necks, just chop necks, right? I don't want to get into too much of that, but then we start getting into like the Turks. And General Monk and his people, they stayed in the place that we know as Turkey. And there's a whole science there with the Turks and the Fez and the Thanksgiving turkey, but we don't care about that right now. Not right now, because what we're speaking about is we're talking about Ookla the monk from Thundar the Barbarian, right? So so that's where you get monk. That's Ookla. Ookla represents General Monk, right? And some, and like I said, you have the crossing of the burning sands, but in some of the episodes you'll see Ookla with a bow and light arrow. He's got this bow and he just pulls at it. It's almost like Hank, but Hank from Dungeons and Dragons. He has the light, he pulls it, and then light bows come out. But Ookla doesn't use it very often, but he does have it, right? So that's Ookla, right? So far we got Thundarr, we have Princess Ariel, and we have Ookla, right? We have everybody. Now let's look at some of the antagonists, right? One of the antagonists, the first episode is the Secret of the Black Pearl. I believe it's the name. It's the title of that episode. That's episode 1. And we come in contact with a wizard named Gemini. That Secret of the Black Pearl. And Gemini basically is like he sounds like. He's got 2 different faces. Now, what's interesting about Gemini is that he arrives again later in the episode Last Train to Doomsday. And he's named Janus. Now, what's important about that, if you understand Roman mythology, there's an archetype named Janus who has 2 different heads or 2 different faces on the same head. So that's really who they were, they were depicted. So the point I'm saying is that in this particular series, you see they're using, real mythology, right? But he does it in a very slick way because he just bunches it all together. What's real cool is that in all the scenes, you see also that split in Broken Moon in the background. Because remember the cosmic event that happened when the runaway planet came, the moon split. Well, you still see them. Now, scientifically, yes. The gravitational pull of the moon would have probably brought it back together, but just follow, And there's some theories about, Chief, how do you know all these mythologies? I don't know, I be knowing stuff. I don't know. Years of you see this? See that gray hair? When you got these, you better know something. Hmm. Couple right there. Yeah, a couple on this side. Yeah. See that? Yeah, you can't have these and not know anything. That would just look stupid. How am I gonna have these? Got one there on the side, right there. Got one right there. I think that's one. Yeah, they starting to come up. They starting to come up on the side of my face. I just had a couple here last year, and then it jumped over to here, and now I was starting to invade. So yeah, man, that's how I know all that mythology. You can't have these and not know anything. What would be the point? But so yeah, so that idea there of the cracked moon, I really like, because I know they got that from Islam. You know what I mean? Where it speaks about the cleft moon. Which there's been a lot of theories on that. Like, is that something that happened, or was that prophecy that Muhammad was speaking about? But that's in the 54th surah, where it speaks about the hour of judgment, and the hour, it says the hour of judgment is here, or the hour of judgment is nigh, and the cleft moon is asunder. So the cleft moon is talking about when the moon splits, right? Now there, if you do some research on it, but it's kind of pseudo. There are NASA images of the moon. You could probably just do a search. Maybe I'm thinking, and just type in maybe split moon or moon split in half, something like that, and you'll see these NASA images of a line going across the moon, like a straight line where it looks like it could have split, right? But scientifically, that's been sort of debunked. So I don't want to speak about it like it's a true thing. Not to say that scientists don't lie, but you could do the research on that if you want. So that could be a prophecy, because it speaks about a time of judgment, and it's saying that the cleft moon is here, but lo, this is not transient magic, or this is not, you know, like this isn't an illusion. This is really happening, right? So I know when Jack Kirby was writing this, I know he pulled from that, and then plus, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad spoke about, that time when people drilled, and put a tube, 2/3 of the way into the planet to try to split it apart, and as a result, a piece of the Earth broke off, creating that satellite that we now know as the moon. So in different forms of Islam, you have this theory, and of course, like I said, Elijah Muhammad spoke about that, about the moon being a broken piece of the earth, and is one of the reasons why the earth is surrounded by 3/4 water, because as a result there was a tipping, which created the axis, the leaning axis that we're now on. But there was a tipping where then water was kind of poured onto the earth's surface, right? Um, so I'm just looking at pictures here. I'm looking at the cartoon pictures. I had all these slide pictures I was gonna get, but so yeah, there's a lot of science on that. I don't want to say science, but there's a lot of speculation and theory on that. But definitely in Islam, you do have the concept of the moon either being a part of the earth, and definitely the moon splitting, and then you know there is a scientific theory. You can even look on NASA's website where it speaks about a planet maybe about the size of Mars hitting the Earth and the debris um, breaking off, and then through gravitation slowly collecting and then forming what we know to be as the moon. You know, so that's also kind of a scientific um, theory as well, and they call that planet that would have hit the Earth Theia, Theia, Theia. So you could like go to NASA's website, look that up, and look up the theory of Theia, or the theory of sudden impact, and it speaks about the moon possibly being a piece of the Earth, right? Which is why there's so much water on the Earth, right? So there's a lot of theories there, but I just like the fact that in the cartoon you have images of that broken moon in the background. I just think it looks very cool. And then you think about it for like a children's cartoon, it's like very dark, you know, that concept, you know. But anyway, so like I said, you had Gemini and Janus, or Janus, which was one of the antagonists. Um, but let's get to Sabian. Sabian's an interesting one because you never really see Sabian throughout the series, but you hear about him because he's the one who was Ariel's stepfather and the one who enslaved Ookla and Thundarr. And the thing about it is that if you watch the credits in the beginning intro, you see him break his chains, right? You see like he was enslaved and he broke his chain stuff. So you see him actually escaping, or them escaping from Sabian. Now Sabian again is interesting. And in the series they spell it, like I said, the spellings are where things get interesting. They spell it Sabian, which is cool because the spellings don't really matter too much if you know what's being said. You wanna if you're doing a science on it, it's Sabean, right? And some people may be familiar with the Sabians. In fact, the nation known as the Nuwapic nation is primarily, many of them are known, they refer to themselves as Sabians now, right? If you read whether the Quran or you read in the Apocrypha, you'll read about the Sabians. They were a group of people. In fact, the Sabians are considered to be the people, excuse me, who lived in the area that we know, or the place of Sheba, right? And there's a whole science there between Solomon and Sheba, right? So some of it is theory, some of it is real, right? But there's a couple of pieces with that wizard Sabian, and the fact that Sabian basically, well, not basically, but Sabian held them captive, you know. And for those of you who deal with the Quran, you also will know about the people of Tuba, or Tuba, Tubba. Tubba, Tuba, and Saba are the same. They're the same people. Okay, so Saba, as you know, is also seven, like Sabbat or Shabbat, or Sheba, you know, or even in Amrik is Saba is seven, or Sheva. In Hebrew, the number seven is Sheva. V and B's are very interchangeable in Hebrew. So Sheva is also could be Sheba or Sheba, right? So these ideas of keep unplugging this thing. I don't want the battery to die. So what was interesting about the Sabians is that the way they dealt with law, they were very pragmatic, but they didn't have a dogmatic approach to culture or community at all. You know, so like they were on it like, you steal something, we cut your hand off. You know, they had a culture like that, and they dealt more with what was intelligent and what was sensible. You know, well, I don't want to say you go back to certain philosophers, but because they existed before these philosophers, but they didn't necessarily follow religious laws. They followed the laws of intelligence. Now, why I think this is so important, because when you watch Thundar the Barbarian, this is how it relates to us now. So tune in, listen, listen up. Nah. But you find that in this particular cartoon, wizards or wizardry was basically the tool of evil people in a sense, right? But they didn't just use wizardry; they used wizardry mixed with technology. And a lot of times, what they would do is they would reanimate or reinvigorate the old technology. Because remember, we're talking about 2,000 years after an impact event that happened in 1994. Now, of course, I know technically all those the buildings wouldn't be standing anymore, and like trains and stuff wouldn't work. But it's a cartoon, so follow on. But all that stuff would have been rusted and disintegrated down to nothing. But it's a cartoon, so flow with it for a second. Um, but the idea there again is that these wizards often would use, um, you know, technology as if it was magical, but the technology was so out of reach for the average person, because you remember the earth was put back into a primitive kind of form, a primitive kind of place, because of the impact event, right? So going back into this primitive nature, right, or being put back into the caves, because like if you look at Thundar and look at his outfit, you look like a caveman. All of that's intentional, you know. Um, but going back into that space, those who had control over the wizardry basically ruled. They were tyrants, right? So now, why this gets interesting is because technology and magic were intertwined, right? But let's just take it to where we are today. I think it's where it gets interesting. Some might say that we're kind of living under certain, especially because of, you know, recent events in the past 12 months or so, we're living under a form of scientific and technological tyranny. And you think about, even now, when we start looking at, peace, Miss Cindy Jones, when we start looking at different ways to ascend to a more comfortable or safer space in the culture that we currently live in, we're told to buddy up to the technology. Like, if you know how to code, if you know how to program, you'll be okay. So coding and programming and having a grasp of the technology gives you almost wizard-like powers today. Now you think about those who don't have that. Think about maybe elders who are just in a place where they're not going to learn how to program and how to code and all of those different things. And you think about the vulnerability that they currently suffer from as a result of not knowing the technology. Well, that's kind of the relationship and the experience that you see even in this particular cartoon, where people who don't have the technology are like primitive. And you see it even down to their tattered clothes and everything. And the wizards, they have an understanding of old Earth technology. There's certain episodes where they're like bringing up atomic bombs, very similar to like Planet of the Apes or Beneath the Planet of the Apes. That's a whole nother deep science with the telepathic humanoids underneath there. That goes back again to stories of Yakub and Yashmal. You know, you don't need me to teach you Yakub and Yashmal. It's already been taught. You just got to do the science on that. But the use of certain things. One scene, you have a group of simians who reassemble this old, like basically King Kong robot from a movie set, and they use it now to attack another group of people. There's so many different things, but you basically see the use of technology intertwined. That's why they say it's a time of super science. That's a term that's used in the intro to the cartoon. Like when they, like, man, I feel like I want to just say the narration. I feel like that narration was so deep. in the beginning. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Because I could have sworn one day reading something or something, and somebody had said the whole thing, the whole beginning. Because I'm going off of memory, but I know there was certain terms that were used that were really cool, like when they introed the actual cartoon, and certain terms that they used to kind of say, well, just the narration in the beginning. But again, this concept of super science is the key, and what is super science? Super science, based on what we're hearing, what we're seeing here, is science infused with magic. Okay, here we go. Open narration. I knew I'd find it. So this is how it starts off. The year 1994. From out of space comes a runaway planet, hurling between the Earth and the moon, unleashing cosmic destruction. Man's civilization is cast in ruin. 2,000 years later, Earth is reborn. A strange new world rises from the old, a world of savagery, super science, and sorcery. But one man burst his bonds to fight for justice. With his companions Ookla the Mock and Princess Ariel, he pits his strength, his courage, and his fabulous sun sword against the forces of evil. He is Thundar the Barbarian, right? So that's the narration that they say in the beginning. But that's where we're at now. Now they're saying this is the year 3994, right? But again, remember this cartoon came out in 1980, right? And the impact event was 1994, so it was all in the future. But the use of technology has almost become the new magic. Not even almost, it is the new magic. It is. There are a lot of people who still don't want to admit that yet. It's tough to admit that those who you chased into the caves, who were later civilized to some degree by Musa, have now figured out a lot of your spiritual sciences and learned how to make technology out of them, to the point that they even put the symbols of your spirit science right on top of their technology. There's a lot of people who like still they don't. It's hard to accept that. You know, that data science and machine learning and deep learning, as they call it, which is all artificial, and it's just more friendlier words for artificial intelligence, because a lot of people are so afraid of that term now, so they use terms like data science, or deep thinking, or deep algorithmic thinking, things like that. It's all artificial. Machine learning. What is machine learning? It's artificial intelligence, right? But even the symbols that they use, that they put on, whether it be certain software, certain microchips, things like that, a lot of times they're occult symbols. They're just hidden, occult symbols, eyes and things like that, right? So it's hard to imagine that technology now has wizard-like power over you, right? You think about things like remote viewing and stuff like that, and then you think about the fact that, well, right now you're all viewing me, and when I end the live, does it mean my camera's off and no one's watching anymore? I don't know. So what do? We put pieces of tapes and band-aids over our camera lenses on our phones and on our laptops and on our tablet. But that doesn't stop the microphone from picking up audio, right? So that idea of being able to astral project and view people and stuff like that can now be done easily through technology, right? We could be easily spied on through the technology. So that's like a form of almost super science to a degree, right? So you get this experience in this particular cartoon of again, like how wizardry or magic or sorcery is mixed with science and mixed with technology, And what's interesting about Thundarr and his sun sword, he never uses the sun sword on anything that's living. He only uses it on what he calls mechity mechs. So he'll use it on robots. He'll use it on technology, things like that. There's a science to that, right? How do we defeat the technology? Through the flaming sword, right? What is the flaming sword of the cherubim? I've taught that one many times, but I don't know if you caught what I was teaching when I was teaching it, so I ain't gonna teach it again. But anyway, so Sabian, like I said, he's an interesting character because he held them victim at one point. This wizard Sabian. But you got to look at the Sabian symbols. Any of you familiar with the Sabian symbols? The Sabian symbols by Elsie Willer, and Mark Edmond. Yeah, Mark Edmond. I always remember his name because Babyface's brother. That group After Seven, one of them was named Mark. So that's how I remember Mark Edmond. But this was an individual who says that he channeled certain spirits and certain energies and came up with these symbols that he called the Sabian symbols that were able to encapsulate certain wisdom and almost provide like a new language for astrology and ritual work that you could work with, right? He sat down in a park, I think this was like in 1925, him and Elsie Willer, and he just like downloaded them to her, right? Now, of course, I'm not negating also the Sabian people, right? They are very sacred people. Oh, you're more than welcome, M. Alexander. You're more than welcome. I'm not discounting the Sabian people that we learn about in our Islamic understandings. I'm grouping both together because when you look at the cartoon, you could clearly see the Islamic influence, like the splitting of the moon, stuff like that. The fact that Princess Ariel was Asiatic, we'll say Asian, but there's a lot mixed in there. You could clearly see it. But those Sabian symbols, man, he established a certain amount of degrees that he called the cherubel. Sounds like cherubim, right? Charubel. Charubel. I'm just giving you spelling in case you want to look up what I'm saying. You better look up what I'm saying, man. I could be drunk. Or just, I could be half crazy. You never know. So, verify for yourself. But so I don't drink, but I'm just saying. But anyway, so basically, and this is interesting because I spoke about this earlier about sometimes us as who do consultations, do readings, us getting burnt out sometimes. You know, Elsie, she was in a space where she was doing readings and stuff like that. She was a medium, and she had spoke about kind of being fatigued and depleted by the kind of questions and like mundane things that people would bring to her. Which, for any of you who do readings, you know what I'm talking about. Like sometimes you get really depleted by like, is my boyfriend cheating on me? Is my wife gonna leave me? It's like, oh God, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't go through all of this spiritual work and understanding and digging to be answering dumb questions, And I'm not saying that to be offensive to anyone. Well, I'm not saying it to directly try to hurt anyone's feelings. Let me say that. You're offended. You can't do much about that. But she was in that space where she was like tired of mundane questions. So that's when they came up with this system of degrees, the Sabian system, where they could kind of dig a little deeper, but also have a quicker and easier way to access divine and occult information, right? So there was this idea too that she felt that they had a genetic linkage with ancient Mesopotamia, right? Now, I won't get into that one too much because then that takes me back to Yashmal and Yashmal and the Anu and Utu as far as it relates to Sabian symbols. So we won't do that too much. But just know that the wizard Sabian, that's a group of people, the Sabians, or from Saba, and the Sabian symbols are a group of astrological symbols. So that's what he was giving you there with the wizard Sabian, showing you what they were being ruled by, ruled over by. And again, the Sabians dealt with intelligence. They were just, we want science. Forget all the religious laws and the hoodoo spookism. Give it to me straight, right? So they were dealing with a different kind of vibration. Now, one of the things I want you to notice with Sabian and with Gemini, with both of them, they were the way Jack Kirby also was the one he worked on the Fantastic Four, and he was the one who designed the look for Darkseid. Now, if any of you familiar with like Superman, you know Darkseid. Darkseid is like he's Thanos in what's that, DC? DC is Superman. I'm not a comic book person, but I believe Marvel is X-Men in them and DC is Superman and Batman in them. So he's like the Thanos for them. Super, super powerful. In fact, if you want to like get into some very accessible occultism, okay, I'm right on that. Thanks, Lo. Like I said, as a child, I didn't have comic books. I didn't have comic books as an adult, so a lot of that stuff I'm not that tight on. Until stuff pops out, then I'm like, wait, I know what that is. So even the first time I saw Darkseid, I was like, I know who that is. There are certain people who exist in the astral realms that you know. In fact, when Jack Kirby created Darkseid, he was supposed to be a mixture of Adolf Hitler and Richard Nixon. As far as his mannerisms, his look, and everything like that. But Darkseid is wow. Darkseid killed his own parents. And he's. I'm just gonna look at a picture. Like I said, I flow from pictures. Yeah, like I said, he killed his parents. His name was Uxas before that. Uxas. Uxas. And his father, here we go, who was even woo. These entities were so powerful, like you couldn't even kill him. His father was Yuga Khan. Khan. Yuga, Yuga Khan. That was his name, right? And long story short, there's a force in that universe called the Omega Force, and Uxas used it to kind of receive the power of gods that he killed. Long story, but it's very similar to the story of the Anunnaki, like very similar. And there's a whole series on the old gods and new gods that's in DC Universe. These are comic book series that you can look at, and they have New Genesis and they have Apocalypse. Apocalypse is a planet, right? And and they're like not warring planets, but they were at one point. And Apocalypse is the planet is completely covered by industry, so you can't even see the planet's surface. It's all machinery. It's very similar to the like the planet in Doom that the Harkonnen had come from, but again, another kind of conversation. But so in this particular one, you have Giddy Prime, exactly, where it's all covered by. It's like the planet is covered by like a big factory almost, but you have New Genesis and you have Apocalypse. Now, the main thing that I wanted to point out there was that Sabian and Gemini, they look exactly the same. It's very interesting the way he drew them, and they all look like Darkseid. And Darkseid's father was a Khan. We go back again to Monk, and the Khans. But the science of Darkseid is deep because there's a lot of Islamic stuff in there, and just looking at his picture, like, and even the new gods, like how they come out of that old energy, and Yuga Khan originally was the ruler of Apocalypse, before his son, um, you know, took him over, and he took on the name Darkseid because his whole body and everything was transformed into what you see now as a product of taking on that Omega Force. Um, but anyway, so there's a lot with this particular series. Thundar the Barbarian. I've already talked for an hour and a half, and I was gonna break down every single story, like the Black Pearl. That's another deep one. Secrets of the Black Pearl. It's a pearl that takes away magic from wizards. As long as you're holding it, wizard magic can't affect you. Oh man, I'm just laughing because like some of these themes, like if you know what they're saying, it's very interesting. And it's not that these writers were so brilliant. It's just that these writers, you're talking about like back in the '70s and stuff, they had access to our sacred texts. That's all. So when you look at the Supermans and the Darkseids and Apocalypse and the Yugas and the Hegras and all of these different entities, Cersei was a witch that was not only in Marvel comics but also in Thundar the Barbarian, Cersei. And you understand who Cersei and all these different people, or even Sabian and how he was the ruler over the 7 citadels. You had 7 citadels of sorcery, and what we're dealing with is really like 7 scientists. You start to, it's just almost amusing because you're like, man, like, you just took the sciences just like that and you turned them into cartoons and you mashed them all together and you do so much to try to hide them, but at the same time you put them out to try to appease the mother plane. So the mother plane will look at you and be like, you know what, maybe we won't chop your head off because you're keeping this energy present, but your head is still going to get chopped off because you're doing it in a very wicked way, which is so interesting. So there's still this manufacturing of these falsities, very similar to how people were manufactured on Pelon, or as John called Patmos, in that very scientific place. But yeah, heads will roll, Chris. you know, but I just urge you, check out the cartoon, check out an episode, and you see what you can see. I didn't want to share too much because I don't want to take you away from what it is that you might discover. But like, even me just looking at the images of the cartoon, like there's so much, man. And even the relationship with Uriel and Thundar. Like I said, Uriel, Ookla, and Thundar are all the same person. They're all the same angel who presides. Like Uriel presides over Tartarus. Tartarus. Tartarus is what you would call hell. And Uriel is called the face of God as well, or Phanuel. Sometimes they're syncretized together. Phanuel, Phanuel, the face of God, right? But just the idea of when you're looking at all of those different images and those different ideas that are presented through cartoons and things like that, you start to realize that signs are put in front of you, and it's not to say that these are not put in front of you, and I'm saying it for you to have a bunch more gods to follow. That's what the mistake a lot of people make, or they think that something is deep because it was hidden, or because it was old, like Janus the double-headed god, or Artemis, which was another wizard inside of Thundar. Just because they're old and they're ancient doesn't mean that they will pop it. You know what I mean? So, 2,000 years from now, Santa Claus is going to be a god. The Easter Bunny is going to be a god. Now we know they ain't about nothing. Now are there entities that exist behind them? Yeah, Nimrod and Astarte. Who later in the Bible became Esther. Because that's not even a real story. Some people cite Esther like, yeah, you know Esther and the way she sacrificed for her people. That's not even a real story. They threw that. They slapped that in there later. The story of Esther is the story is that they're talking about what they would call a pagan deity, Astarte, where you get Easter. There was no Queen Esther. That was a myth. That was fake. Um, but there was a Nimrod, and you can find Nimrod in the Quran. You find Nimrod in the Bible. You find Nimrod in the Emerald tablets. You know, where you get your Christmas from. But the point I'm saying is that sometimes you look at these old things and you get fascinated. They can be very beguiling, and that's part of the science there. Like in this cartoon with Thundar, is like I hate wizards, you know, and it's like he's just using his strength and he's using his courage and his bravery, whereas the wizards are always trying to use technology to sustain their own life or to try to take over or do this or do that, and you start to realize that on some levels that technology is not your friend, you know, and sometimes certain things should not be tampered with, and certain things should not be emulated. As most technology is an emulation of spirit science and what's found in nature, that some things ought to be left alone. But when you're racing the clock and you're trying to be where you ought not be, then you use uh, occult technology. I want to know this now, you know, or like I said, when people come to you with questions like, "Is my spouse cheating on me?" That's not what you should use that for. If you feel your spouse is cheating on you, you got a deeper issue. If you need me to assure you that they are, even if I say they're not, you're still going to think they are. You're just going to keep going to somebody till somebody says they are. Then you'll feel satisfied. That's the deeper issue. But when someone is possessed by that spirit, and like you say something like, "Well, I'm not going to read on that," or you tell them no, they're not. They don't hear you. They, they're not. That's not something answer I was looking for. You didn't give me what I wanted. You know, because the truth is they're possessed by a spirit that's looking to usurp um, the seated position of the authority that the Most High is supposed to have inside of them. I'll get into that another one because I'm gonna do a segment dealing with pride soon, but I'll speak about that. You know how that relates to pride. You know, and really always, and a lot of times technology and misguided science is used. You think about again the scientific genetic experiments that were done on the island of Patmos. You know, and some could cite the genetic experience that was done on Adon when his rib was taken out of him and he was cloned and Eve was made. I mean, some could say, well, heck, that was a genetic experiment. You're right, but what was the intention behind it? You know, yeah, that was eugenics. Yeah, that was cloning. You know, but at the same time, we got to look at the intent behind why we're using the technology or why we're using the spirit sciences. And a lot of times, that's where we lose it. That's what's off. That's what's missing. You know, so Thundar deals with that. And but like I said, um, you know, check it out. You know what I mean? See how you feel about it. See if you get you know some of the things that I point out. And like I said, I try to leave a lot out because there's more wizards. There's way more wizards. You know, and there's way more scenes and little things dropped. You see a lot of hermetic Kabbalah pieces in this particular cartoon. And like I said, Uriel's a significant, you know, just because of Uriel's position. Almost knocked the stand over. Uriel's position at the end of the world, you know. But that's all I wanted to share for now. I mean, it was a lot. But like I said, I'm not going to be on, so you won't have to look at me for a while. I'm just going to really be focused on you know, doing podcasts for here. Like I said, for those of you who missed it in the beginning, I'm going to take a hiatus from YouTube lives and stuff like that because I know that you've been looking into your phones and into your devices too much. And I'm sure a lot of you now, even for work and school, have had to use remote video software to work and to conference with coworkers and things like that. And there's a burnout. It's very fatiguing. Not only just to the eyes, but just to your spirit, to your energy, because um, you spend all day. You might be at work 6, 7 hours, whatever, doing meetings, and you're talking into a little device, and you're faking it the whole time. There's no tension of energy. There's not even any sexual tension with your coworker. It's nothing. And it could be very exhausting. And like I said in the beginning, I don't want to add to more of that. I would like you to get away from your screens. So at least with a podcast, you can put your phone in your bag and just listen or something like that while you're doing something else. Peace, Tawana. So I don't I don't want to contribute to what's happening right now. You need to have your eyes open and looking around you, like Gemini. Gemini had two different faces. Janus, he had a face in the front and the back. You know, later for all this, for catching the next YouTube live and all that stuff like that, man. So, like I said, I'm just gonna do some podcasting for a while and get into different subjects and stuff like that. And willfully, you'll enjoy that. And if not, I'll be back on another time. But we need to pull back from some of this for a little while because there's stuff that's happening, and I'm seeing like us being pulled along. I was even looking at the COVID relief check thing, and I'm like, every day I'm getting a new pop up about how much the check could be. Every day, it's like either you're gonna get a check or you're not. But it's not like it's gonna be life changing. That little punk, 1,200 or 2,000, said, what's that really gonna do at the end of? But you keep putting up it every day, 2, 3, and the bill is gonna go through the bill, and I'm seeing you trying to really keep our heads in these devices and not looking around at us, not looking at, the vegetation that's growing or not growing, not looking if we could see that double sun in the sky, or not looking if we can see the split lines in the moon, or the vehicles parked behind the moon, or the vehicles stacked on each other next to the sun. The ships stacked on top of each other, interlocked, in back of the sun. You look on certain days, you see something. It look like a station or something up there, But instead, we're looking inside of phones. So I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of that. Not right now. Later. Later, but not right now. Right now, I want y'all to look at the vegetation that's growing around your house. Because what grows around a person's house is not only what is there to feed them, to heal them, but sometimes also to show what kind of justice is due to them. There's certain herbs that will grow at a house to let you know if it's like a reading. It will show you the spirit of the person that lives there. We need to be paying attention to that, man. And just the energy that the earth is giving off right now, and what each other is giving off. Like, let's look at each other. You know, we're being trained to keep these masks on, stay 6 feet away from each other. Don't even look at me, and let's just look at each other through these little screens. Nah, man. Don't. I'm not telling you to go out there and do anything that's going to put your health at risk, but at the very least, you can have a conversation from 10 feet away. I'll say 10. I'll add an extra 4. Or at least just look at the stars. Just look at the sky. It's cooler out now in the winter season. Look at the stars. See if you see something different. See if you see something moving in a way that stars ain't supposed to move. There's some freaky stuff happening. Look at Orion. Orion has been doing some interesting stuff as of late. I've been noticing it. So that's why I say that. So yeah, podcast I'll do. You could listen to that with headphones on or with a Bluetooth speaker and still be looking up at the skies or whatever. But we got to stop staring at these devices so much, man. At least right now. And then when that changes and spirit tells me something different, I'll do something different. But right now, spirit is telling me not to be a part of that wizardry. Because that's all that's happening right now, man. And, we forget. I hope you're still stacking food. Like I've been telling you, Yeah, no doubt, Logan. You know, my honor. I hope you still stacking food up, man, and keeping your system clean. And if you're not good at long distance travel, man, I hope you've been walking, trying to build up that endurance. More than welcome, Alex. If you don't have a bicycle, get a bike. You'd be surprised what you could do with a bicycle. You know, um, yeah. If you're ever in a situation where roads are closed, or you just can't really travel like you want to travel, you can cover a lot of distance with a bicycle. You know, but don't take your mind out of survival. Like, don't. We're not. We're not out of it. We're not out of it. In fact, it hasn't even started. you know, so we're at the precipice of it. So don't get distracted in thinking that a savior has arrived because of an election result. Because the truth is, until the chosen come back together, we're screwed. In simple terms, we're screwed. And some of that unity is going to be forced, as I've often said. So, I'd rather you put more energy into that, and I'll do what I can. I'll still give you audio, here and there. But to keep it real, I got other things that need to be done too. I got people depending on me, a lot of people depending on me. So I come when I need to come, or if I don't need to come, you ain't gonna hear from me. That's just how it is. And willfully, you're so busy with your preparations, and with you 7 miles a day run, woo, Alex, 18 hours a day fasting, separatus, chief. All right, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, man, 7 miles. All right, I ain't there. That's great, man. You sound like you really, maybe that new baby really, you know ignited something in you, man. But that's great. Um, that's what we need to be on, man. I've been telling you for a while, man. Especially you brothers, man. You got to weaponize yourself, and I don't mean just getting bullets and stuff like that, but I mean like your body. You have to weaponize yourself, man. Um, there's so many situations that happen. When I looked at the situation that happened with Nick Cannon, and the situation he got into, and I said, when he came back and changed what he said, I said, yeah, man, he was worried. Somebody must have sent a golem to his house, but he was worried. Somebody said, hey, man, we're gonna get you and your babies, you know. But if he was surrounded by people, the right people, if he was weaponized, and if the people around him were weaponized, they'd be ready for that. You know, yeah, come on, let's do it. Let's go. We've been preparing. We're ready. You know, and again, I'm not just saying what you get as an extension to yourself, but I'm saying these empty hand, karate, empty hand. What you're able to, weaponizing this in terms of how you're thinking, and how you're preparing yourself mentally, because that's where it begins and that's where it ends. To be honest with you, because you can't kick hard enough, and you can't have enough um, machinery to defeat what other people have been developing. So it's not even about that. Trust me, I don't care how tough you think you are, but it's about becoming so united in your cause and in your purpose to be free, and to make sure that your community is doing well, and that your family is safe, and things like that. That you become what's necessary to become for the time. So I would surely rather see the barbarian come out, and a lot of you who have been softened and comforted by complacency more than anything, than you just listen to me, because you know you got many years in of hearing what I'm talking about. And yeah, I got new stuff, and I got way more stuff. Like the person asked, "How do you know all this mythology?" It's a lot. I mean, I haven't shared a tenth of what I know with y'all. Like, and I'm learning new things every day. So I mean, I'm not gonna run out. Don't worry. You know, like I've heard people say that before. Man, you was dropping it before, like almost like I don't have any more left. No, I, you know, that's why I always laugh. Like I say sometimes when students try to use my teachings against me, or they start talking to me about Orisha stuff, and I'm like, it's like, oh, that's so cute. You know, well, I'm gonna listen to my Ori because my Ori. You didn't even know what that word was before I told you what that word was. Like it's almost cute to me. Like, oh, you know, or like when they hear me quote out of the Quran or out of the Bible, like, oh, you quoting out of the Quran now, out of the Bible. I've been studying this stuff since I was a teenager. I was studying this stuff before I knew what an Orisha was. I knew about General Monk before I knew about Ogun. You know, and that's real. Like I'm not exaggerating. I knew about Monk and Yashmal and Yakub, you know, and the albinoids and the ebenoids and the rubinoids. I knew about them before I knew about Ogun and Oshun and Shango. Even though I grew up singing those chants, I didn't know what I was singing, you know. Um, so yeah, it's not new to me, you know. And these are not the things I actually study. What I study is, you know, is much different than what I teach, because I don't teach what I study, because if I'm studying it, that means it's still not integrated. So I don't think that's a responsible thing to do. You know, so anything I teach is, chances are, so old. For me, it's old because I've integrated it for at least a decade, at minimal a decade. So I can tell you the parts that's not real and the parts that are real. But if I'm studying something, even within the past 3 years, you won't hear it come out my mouth, because I haven't had enough time and enough seasons to really integrate it and experience it from multiple angles, you know. Um, so yeah, so that's what I just wanted to share about, like, podcasts and stuff. I'll still be over there, so make sure you subscribe. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. I don't remember. There's a bunch of other there's a bunch of other platforms. But if you go to chiefyuya.com and go to the podcast part, it shows you the different places you can sign up with. I know everybody either has a Android phone or Apple phone, so that's why I always say just Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, and I'm right there. But yeah, I'm gonna put a little bit more energy in that. And like I said, and on Clubhouse, I'm gonna start doing Clubhouse talks a bit more. I haven't done any, but I'm gonna start doing some. Yeah, yeah. Renee Jenkins, cool, cool, cool. All right, everyone. So I don't think this is not really like a Q&A type of segment I did. So I'm sure y'all ain't got no questions about Thundar. And plus, you could just watch Thundar for yourself. But willfully, something sparked, willfully, and willfully, maybe you have a different perspective and viewpoint on your own uses of technology, and maybe sometimes what you overlook, and the amount of magic that's in your phone, or in your fitness tracker that you wear right on your wrist, and you might not realize, that people are employing magical formulas and algorithms all around you, but just calling it something different. No different than we look at this cartoon and they're talking about General Monk, but they made General Monk this like animal, and you wouldn't even know what's being said, So the savagery and the toughness of Monk, like, yeah, I know I'm gonna poke my head out of this border and something's gonna cut my head off. That's pretty terrifying. You know what I mean? But that idea of that cherubim, whether it's guarding the Garden of Eden, or whether it's guarding Mecca, or it's guarding that area of of Turkey, and how people may view that, you know, you start to understand where some of these feuds come from between different groups of people, you know. And though you may read something or you may watch a cartoon and think that it's just hollow mythology, you start to realize that there's more truth to it. But you know, ultimately it comes down to the savage and the civilized. Who's going to live civilized? And that goes beyond phenotype. You know, just always remember that goes beyond phenotype, because those who choose to live in Mecca and live in a civilized way are fine. And those who want to continue to be wicked, wickedness means to go against nature. Those who want to choose to continue to go against nature, they will be dealt with in another kind of way, man. And the misuse of science and technology is going against nature, you know. That's why science also always has to have a consciousness or a conscious connected to it, or it can be very dangerous, you know. All right, so that's enough for us. And everyone, please enjoy your evening. And I'll see you over at on the audio platforms a little bit later. And whenever I throw up a random video here, I'm sure will come. But definitely, I will use safety and good counsel, and definitely will that you continue to build up your stores, continue to put that green powder away. You know, green powder. You can make your own green powder if you need to. Continue to put that water away. You know what I mean? Make sure the tires are good on your vehicle. Make sure that you keep a full tank of gas in your vehicle. I will that you do that. You know, and just stay ready. All right, everyone. Be well. Be